My name is Chris Bruin and welcome to this presentation on my project towards climate adaptation in Malusi. Simply, I'll introduce the project and its intention, breaking it down into where it's located, what the intervention is, how it will be implemented, and who it's meant for, while also reflecting on the success of the process at the end. This is Malusi, or a view into the formalizing parts of the neighborhood, and your first impression is as good as mine. We weren't able to visit the site, of course, because of lockdown regulations, but despite that, the brief challenged us to, quote, develop a clinic and research center site as a catalyst to implement long-term climate adaptation solutions and achieve climate change transformation. Now, I quickly aligned with the brief after our group mapping exercises and spectating previous workshops on what the community wanted and needed. Personally, my goal is to help integrate communities and relieve hazards effectively by playing with the preconceived ideas of sustainability, materiality, and informality surrounded by a formal urban context. Developing a functioning yet flexible permanent clinic was of primary concern, of supporting programs that further the adaptive argument. Of course, to implement adaptive strategies, we need to understand the concept itself within this context. Adaptation is a response to global warming that aims to strengthen resilience to climate-related issues by moderating or avoiding harm and exploiting beneficial opportunities. And it's within Malaysia itself, it means addressing specific sensitivities such as little access to healthcare, information, or even shedding on site when exposed to hazards like poor infrastructure, water shortages, extreme heat, and extreme weather events. That's a mouthful, but we're only scratching the surface on what effects historic and present marginalization has on the urban sprawl in Pretoria. So finding the site, Malusi is located northeast to Pretoria CBD and the Daspoort Tunnel. This is significant as it sits on the northern face of the Magaliesberg Range, exposed to the local microclimate and intense solar radiation, wind, and eastern storms. The growth of the settlement means a drastic decrease in topsoil and vegetation, as is common in these settlements, leading to decreased groundwater absorption and erosion through rocky alluvial soil. Malusi is bounded by surrounding former neighborhoods, a wetland, and of course the Southern Hill. As mentioned in our group work, we identified several vulnerabilities Malusi faces. However, through a quasi-quantitative method, as I'll reflect on later, I derived a few most pertinent sensitivities weighted against the greatest hazards in an attempt to find vulnerabilities that, once addressed, could catalyze solutions to other vulnerabilities with Malusi. In retrospect, the success of this process is questionable, but for me, quite notable. Initially, I explored two very different sites. Site A, that is provided by a municipal nursery that Malusi surrounds, and another Site B on the eastern bank of Malusi's largest dam, located next to a natural drainage channel. Mainly to explore the possibilities of different physical attributes, microclimates, different users, and the movement of people and resources through the settlement. Site A is very constrained by the northern road that solely connects Malusi's informal western district and its formalizing western district. This is, of course, a great opportunity to connect two communities with this single intervention. I think the nearby nursery and wetland has a marginal effect on the local environment in terms of temperature and humidity, but there's several ECDs, shops, and residents nearby as it's within a node in the settlement. Site B is interesting because it's located on the site that's clearly an obstacle for people moving through Malusi, as shown by footpaths and desire lines through the adjacent but smaller wetland. The dam is a barrier, but could also be a source of water, food, or even passive cooling strategies, and an intervention on its banks could allow for greater, more responsible movement through Malusi and easier access, of course, to its resources. I did, however, choose to work on Site A, as it's well documented and understood for the sake of simplicity. Now, given these explorations, what can be done? I initially reacted with 5 different actions, informed by our mapping, exploration, and a little bit of intuition. Namely, by providing emergency use spaces, safe, accessible pedestrian infrastructure, reducing erosion, improving thermal comfort, and integrating it to the formalizing and formal neighborhoods. Then I derived these 3 concepts through a lens of infrastructure. The first, concept A, I speculate on ideas of simplicity, modularity, and expandability, thus the ability to adapt, of course, creating a permanent building on site A. That gives as much public space as it takes, using the adjacent cell phone tower as a landmark to locate an essential emergency health clinic. Alternatively, a larger, more dramatic intervention might provide many points of interest and programs where, as a building, it is the infrastructure needed upon which social programs could rely, while also hosting a clinic and the research facilities along with the programs, other programs as a multifunctional center. However, the third concept excited me the most and is what I ended up choosing as a combination of the three. It's a series of distributed small-scale pavilion-like structures that could disperse critical pieces of infrastructure across a much larger portion of Malusi, reacting to local needs and resources. This could increase the overall effectiveness of an intervention and provide many safe spaces, landmarks, and infrastructure. This is urban acupuncture, if you will, not too dissimilar from the violence prevention through urban upgrading program in the Western Cape. Fundamentally, these ideas explore options that will enhance the potential and regenerative capacity of the site. Regenerative design is understanding systems, designing for the evolution of that systems while partnering with the place where the system exists. This is a new interpretation of sustainability and is based on creating constructive relations and acknowledging change while reflecting on failures to create regenerative design solutions. This is important for Malusi as it's growing so rapidly but yet at an unsustainable pace to meet its demand for resources, resulting in ecological, social, and economical damage to the city as a whole. But to contextualize these concepts, I studied the local hillside clinic by Harvey Fagan to understand how a clinic could work sustainably. Also, an example in Brazil, Arena de Moro by Herzog de Meuron, which provided a lot of insight into multifunctional spaces as social infrastructure. This gymnasium was built on the site with an existing concrete playing field, and it was adapted to accommodate a much wider variety of functions. The structure is very different from its surrounding context, with materiality and being quite generous spatially. And as a passive landmark, it becomes active as you move closer to its semi-transparent skin, or when it's lit from the interior at night. Our climates are very similar, and it provided a lot of insight into the passive thermal comfort strategies that I could use in Malaysia as well. Speaking of strategies, as mentioned before, I already isolated the most important sensitivities and programs. The challenge was prioritizing programs that are consistent with the needs of the COPC as well, and the goals of climate adaptation in mind. The programs were sorted. I sorted the programs according to their weighted importance to allow for an intervention that could adapt and evolve from a small, permanent, yet primary clinic, expanded through secondary social programs into a comprehensive intervention with simple tertiary amenities like shading and seating on site. This is well aligned with the three main end users, the medical staff and the researchers, as well as the public and especially pedestrians. The need for medical services, a sensitive population, and still formalizing Malusi really emphasizes the need for healthcare infrastructure. But as we saw with the pandemic, it also needs to be able to adapt quickly for emergencies. Yet again, it should also be able to evolve incrementally. This could be achieved through disentangling services and served spaces, and designing secondary spaces with the needs of primary spaces in mind. That is the essence of open architecture, and it would greatly simplify future growth. Then, through resilient building technology, a structural framework could anticipate change, accommodate different materials, methods, and needs, as every intervention is really located in its own slightly unique context. I determined all of these necessary functions for a clinic, social spaces, and a public space, and related them spatially as a futile exercise to understand the complex needs of all these programs. The nature and location of the site allowed for northern and western entrances, separated by an enclosed cell phone tower. As mentioned before, the trees to the south and adjacent public roads and the site's orientation had me come up with a generous master plan with a diagonal footpath through the site. This is supposed to be a much smaller intervention, one that allowed for a lot more public space, especially north of the main facade. Then I derived a structural grid based on the dimensions of a 6-meter shipping container, a maximum depth of 9 meters to maintain good natural light, and 2-meter wide service cores for services and the future vertical circulation. The building and road allowed for several varied public and private open spaces to accommodate different types of pedestrians and users. On plan, a functional administrative core was flanked by medical spaces to the east, with required services like a reception and waiting spaces. A solid northern facade provided privacy and thermal mass. To the west, the multifunctional wing houses meeting spaces, a safe house, information space, and a security checkpoint. This wing is adaptable and opens up to northern verandas, trees, and the public area in front. The last of which is served by ablutions, trees for shading, and structures I call rails. These rails are pre-built with the expansion of the clinic in mind, but are available for secondary and temporary structures to use as foundations, protected service lines, or even just seating for the public. This is core to the intervention, one that provides the infrastructure needed to create different yet adequate spaces through the use of appropriate building technology. Building technology that allows users to adapt their climate and integrate with their environment over time to create a narrative, a climate narrative. The intention of the project is to become the seed for new growth, while regenerating the systems the building should come to reflect as it evolves through time. To eventually become an integral part of Belusi as one of many landmark facilities the communities surrounding it can call their own. So, looking back at the work that produced, I find myself doubting what real adaptive capacity of this intervention really is, because of the difficulty in measuring or calculating that capacity, despite my efforts. Uh, and while I did focus on the building as a framework to accommodate change, perhaps there's too much focus on growth, which led to an intervention reaching a size I really didn't intend, all towards fulfilling a brief. This could constrain its evolution and ability to adapt to impending climate change conditions, though. However, I'm thrilled to finally start thinking about realizing ideas on authorship, open architecture, and climate adaptation towards a regenerative urban environment.